Hey everyone, it's Smita. Today we are going to be doing a multiple palettes, multiple looks video. And for this video, we actually have 4 palettes from indie brands that we're going to be playing around with. We have 2 from Gourmand Girls, 1 from Nomad Cosmetics, and 1 from Ladybug Glow that you can get on Etsy or on the Gourmand Girls website. I do have a discount affiliate code that is the same at most places. I'm going to go ahead and pop it up on the screen now. We're going to start off with some detailed swatches of everything, so let's go ahead and get into it. Even if you're not in the market for any new palettes, I hope you'll enjoy watching and creating some looks with me. Alright, starting off with Gourmand Girls, we have the palette called Pandemonium. Here is what the inside of the palette looks like. For me, this is the perfect quintessential fall palette. It strikes me as a very cohesive color story, and I love the warm and toasty tones that you get in here. And I also love that you have some very bright pops of yellow and red. You can see that for shimmers, you have some that are semi-sheer and iridescent, and you also have some more deeper jewel tone shades. I do love a cohesive color story and a palette where it doesn't feel like you have any redundant shades. And I have to say, I was super excited to dive into using this one. Here is what the whole palette looks like swatched to my arm. Lots of variations in tones and textures, and also it feels like a nice palette for summer going into fall. We're not really getting into those grungy and spooky tones quite yet. The next palette we have is called Thunderstruck. Here is what the inside of the palette looks like. To me, this is a variant of a kind of blue monochromatic palette with a particular emphasis on muted tones. And when it comes to blue palettes, you'll never hear a complaint from me. You can see that you have some deep and moody shimmers, some shimmers that are a little bit more semi-sheer. You don't have any iridescence in here, but you do definitely have some shades that would work really beautifully as highlighting shades. Here is what the whole palette looks like swatched to my arm. You have a nice range in lighter mattes to deeper mattes. You don't really have too much transition shade options, but we'll see how everything works when we dive into a look. Okay, the next palette that we have is from Ladybug Glow, and this is a brand that I've featured on my channel a few different times. I've really enjoyed their palettes, and their palettes have also been sold at the Gourmand Girls website. I was super excited for this color story. I love that you have a mixture of muted tones, darker tones, and that pop of kind of bright neon. Just a really fun and unexpected color story. I also like the heavier matte to shimmer ratio, and I do enjoy a concise color story when it feels complete. As you can see, all of these shimmers look quite different. That was a critique I had of previous palettes where I felt like a few of the shimmers looked a bit too similar, which is not the case here. And here is what the whole palette looks like swatched to my arm. My eyes are definitely super drawn to that chartreuse matte. Really excited to incorporate that one into my look. Okay, and the last of the 4 eyeshadow palettes is from Nomad, and at the time that I'm making this video, this palette is currently available. It's called Outback Adventures. It draws inspiration from Australia, and here is what the color story looks like. I would describe this as a muted, grungy fall color story. As I was swatching these shimmers, I was happy to see that it really does feel like the texture on these is going to work for a lot of different skin types. You don't really have a squish in the pan, and all of these shades are quite sparkly, and you also have a few chromes in here as well. Now, Nomad does have a few other things that have launched alongside of their palette, and these are 2 blush palettes. I was super excited about these because I was not expecting these colors. Like, these are colors that will work on such a wide range of skin tones. This first palette that I'm swatching is just giving me the vibes of if you are after that kind of sun-kissed, sunburnt look. These feel like a cream to powder type formula. They have a buildable opacity. So even those deeper and more vibrant shades I do think are going to work for kind of lighter skin tones as well, but they're also going to really stun on deeper complexions. This second palette that I'm swatching is definitely more those purples and berry tones. This fourth shade in the palette that I'm about to swatch is a beautiful deep purple toned blush. I am so excited to incorporate that one into my looks. Okay, and the last part of the Nomad collection includes 4 liquid lips, and these are supposed to be long wearing. They dry down completely, and I do believe this is a totally new formula from the brand. I will be incorporating these into my looks as well. All right, let's go ahead and dive into using the 2 Gourmand Girls palettes. I'm going to start off by using Thunderstruck. Here's what it looks like on the inside. You know, I'm always excited for blue eyeshadow, and this is a very cohesive color story. I am going to do one look on each eye. I think I want to do a halo eye. I'm going to start off with this blue shade here. This is what I would describe as a pretty mid-toned muted blue. And I'm just going to start putting down that shade all over the lid. And then on a smaller brush, I'm just going to sweep that same shade under the lower lash line. And there's a few different blues that I am interested in using. I think I'm going to start off with this shade here called Phase Shift. And I'm going to use a smaller brush and just start creating the shape of my halo. With these palettes, I can really tell that the vibes are shifting into fall. And you have to let me know what you think. I honestly do feel kind of ready for fall colors, but I'm not ready for summer to be over. I'm going to take a little bit of that same shade and start to place it on the corresponding area of the lower lash line. Coming back to my fluffier brush, I'm just going to place a little bit more product on the outer portion of the lid. I am getting some fallout, but honestly, it's not bad, especially considering this is quite a deep shade. I'm finding that the mattes are very pigmented and they feel like they're blending well. I would say a little bit goes a long way for sure. I cleaned off my brush and I'm just going to blend out around the edges. And dipping in again with my smaller brush, just going to place some shadow on the corresponding area of the lower lash line and connect that up. I'm going to take that same smaller brush and just intensify the area that I placed that deep blue shadow on the lid. All right, now I'm just going to go back in with this lighter blue matte and just use a little bit to soften around these outer edges. All right, now I just want to add a little bit of lightness to the look. I'm going to go in with this shade Cloud Deck, and I'm going to add that to the inner corner. And then I'm going to add a little bit to the brow bone as well. All right, before I go in with my shimmer, I'm just going to add a little bit of shimmer primer. This is the Clionadh Embed to the Brow one. Pat that in with my finger. A little bit to the lower lash line, kind of in the center. And for my shimmer, I do think I need some contrast in the center of the lid. So I'm going to go in with Rayleigh Scattering. Here's what it looks like swatched on my fingertip and the back of my hand. It's kind of like a sheer blue, kind of like a semi-sheer shade. It is a little bit more textured, so you just have to keep that in mind, but I'm not getting much fallout with it or any fallout so far. And that is a beautiful lid shade. A glowy blue. Always my jam. Try to pick up a little bit with a brush and place it on the lower lash line. It's a little bit harder to apply with a brush, to be honest, because these have a little bit of a larger sparkle particle size to them. Now I'm going to add a little bit of this liner Sabbath from Urban Decay to the waterline. All right, and because I don't have on blush yet, I'm gonna go in with this new blush palette from Nomad. Ooh, there's so many shades in here that I think would work so well for my skin tone. But I think I'm gonna go in with the shade Plum Horizon. Now this is very pigmented, but I'm gonna just go in very lightly with my fingertip. Actually blends really beautifully with your finger, but I am going to take a smaller blending brush and just work that into the skin. Just build that up a little bit more. And you can totally keep building this. I'm just trying not to go overboard because I do really love blush. Just going little by little. Here is what the shade Plum Horizon looks like. This is just basically like a couple of light layers. You can totally build this up more if you wanted to. I'm going to apply the liquid lipstick, and this is the shade Outback Adventure. All right, I added some lip liner, and here is the first completed look. All right, and for my second look, I'm gonna dip into this absolutely gorgeous fall color story from Gourmand Girls. So many shades I wanna use in here. But I think I'm gonna start off with the shade Fuego, which is this gorgeous red matte here. And I'm just going to place it on the inner portion of the lid. That is so pigmented. Wow, that is one dip into the pan. That's a gorgeous red matte. And of course, I'm going to use the yellows in the palette, but I think I'm going to use them more as like my accent shades, inner corner, brow bone, just to get my brightness. Very impressive red matte, I have to say. And then I'm going to add a little bit to the lower lash line. Okay, on the outer portion of the lid, I'm going to go in with this brown toned matte here called Smolder and just start building up. I'm going to go in with a slightly fluffier brush and just really blend that out around the edges. And then I'm just going to take a little bit and run that on the lower lash line and connect that up. All right, now for a kind of deepening up in this outermost corner, I'm going to use the shade Night Journey, which is a really nice maroon matte. Good maroon matte is hard to come by, in my opinion. Just going to just deepen that up a little bit. And then again, just connect that to the lower lash line. All right, now I'm going in with the shade Scorched. And I'm just going to add that out here. Just kind of blend that outwards. All right, now I'm just going to prime the lid again with my shimmer primer. And of course, my eyes went right to Slow Burn. It's this gorgeous duochrome in the shade, in the palette. Let me swatch it. Here's what it looks like swatched in the back of my hand. Just gonna pick up a little bit on my fingertip and start to place that on the center of the lid. That is a gorgeous shade. There are a couple of really nice highlighting shades in here, both this yellow one and this iridescent. I think I'm going to use both, honestly. I'm going to start off by, this one is a little bit more textured, this yellow one. So maybe I'll use that on the brow bone. But I'll start off with the smoother iridescent. Here's what it looks like on my fingertip. And I'm just going to place that a little bit on the inner corner. Yeah, that's good because it is yellow. It's going to pair well with that yellow matte that I have in the inner corner as well. Actually, I think I'm just going to take that same shade because I really do like that smoother texture as a highlighting shade. And place that onto the brow bone. All right, taking the Urban Decay liner and whiskey, placing that on the waterline. Okay, for the blush, I'm going to go into this palette because I feel like it's going to go with this look better. And again, there's so many shades in here that I think would work well on my skin tone, which I'm really happy about. Let's see. I will go in with Sun-Baked Earth, which is this kind of red toned shade here. And again, I'm just going to tap that on. This one is really pigmented, but blending in well, and definitely seems like quite a buildable formula. Gorgeous formula. Here is the second completed look. All right, now that I've had a chance to play around with these two Gourmand Girls palettes and the blushes from Nomad and the liquid lip, I just want to close up with some initial wrap-up thoughts on these before I go into my next looks. So obviously these color stories are completely different. The blue and then this kind of really what I would consider to be a perfect fall toned color story. I think that, obviously since the vibes are totally different, depends what you're looking for. I think for me personally, I do feel like this palette is maybe the more unique of the two. And I say that because I think you get a really nice array of iridescence, kind of semi-sheer shades for the shimmers and deeper shimmers. And the yellow mattes performed really, really well. The red matte performed well. Those can be a little bit trickier to do. So I do feel like, if I had to, and I say this as a blue eyeshadow lover, if I had to tell you, which one I would pick between the two, it would be this one here, and this again is called the Pandemonium palette. So that's if I had to pick between the two, but I feel like they both, you know, performance wise performed very well, so you can't go wrong either way. I think maybe if I would have changed anything about this palette, I would have maybe added an iridescent in here, or, you know, maybe one more shimmer that was lighter, and then maybe a transition shade, because you have a couple of you have one lighter matte and a bunch of deeper mattes, and I love having deeper mattes, but maybe I would have liked to have one more transition type of shade. But that being said, I really do like the look that I was able to come up with this palette. The blush palettes I am incredibly impressed with performance-wise. Well, first of all, the color stories inside them. Again, this is the warmer of the two, and then this is the more purple-leaning palette. I would describe this as kind of a cream to powder finish and buildable in the pigmentation. So really, really excited about these, and I think they're incredibly inclusive, so I love to see that. I do think that these will work for a lighter skin tone as well because they have such a buildable formula. Liquid lipsticks, I have to give these a little bit more time before I give my kind of final thoughts on them, of course, but I do like the fact that these stay put, and I think these will give you a long wear. I'm just not sure if they feel a little bit dry for my preference. I think they might, but if you're into a long wear liquid lipstick, this could be a good option. I haven't done my formal wear test with it yet, but I can tell from the way that they feel that there's going to be some good wear with these. I just feel like they might be a little bit dry for my preference. All right, now we're going to dip into Flora Mist by Ladybug Glow, and this is currently available on the Etsy site, as well as I think their site is live now too, and this will be on Gourmand Girls on August 14th. And I have to say, I am incredibly inspired by this color story. I don't know, the assortment of mattes in here is just so interesting. So yeah, we're going to play around with a bunch of the mattes. I'm going to start off with the shade Salvia. It's this kind of pinky toned shade here. And I'm just going to take a fluffier brush and start putting that all over the lid. Just really love how unique this color story is. You get some muted tones, but then you also have a little bit of bright tones. I love that you have some lighter mattes to deeper mattes. And I know that the owner has mentioned to me before that they really like buildable mattes, which I do as well. I find these mattes to be really user-friendly, easy to work with. Now I'm just going to take some on this smaller brush and add that to the lower lash line as well. Now we're going to start to slowly deepen up the outer corner. I'm going to go in with Primrose, which is the next deeper kind of like mauve-y brown shade. And I'm going to use this smaller brush and just start to deepen up that outer corner and sweep that up into the crease from the outer corner. Just really taking my time because I am going to deepen it up further with the matte that's even deeper than this called Baccara. And then I'm going to add that same shade along the lower lash line as well. And now I'm going to go in with Baccara and just start to even further deepen up that outer corner. And just run that right through the crease with that kind of smaller, more precise brush. And then I'm going to add that same shade to the lower lash line as well. All right, now what I'm going to do is the tones of this liner from Urban Decay are perfect. I think this is basically supposed to be like kind of a liquid liner, but it does have some ability to like kind of blend it. But the tones of it are perfect. This is one of their newer liners. It's called the Liquid Stick. And this is Wine Spell. And I'm going to basically use it, put a bunch on the upper and lower lash line and into the waterline. So let me just start off by putting that on the waterline. This is a retractable liner. Love the tone of that shade. I'm just going to put a little bit right under the lower lash line before I try to blend it out. Just going to take my fingertip and blend that out. I'm just going to go in with my brush and blend it. I'm just going to add a little bit to the upper lash line. And then to blend out what I did on the upper lash line, I'm going to go in with that deep shade Baccara again and just use that to kind of go over the area where I place the liner. And then the last thing I'm going to do on the lid is go in with that light matte that we started with and just kind of go back over the center lid space, just because I want that to be nice and bright. All right, now I'm just going to go in with a little bit of the shade Alkaline from Urban Decay, which is one of their older eyeliners, and just kind of go over this shape, the deeper shape, like this brush that's on the other liner, and just start to smudge that out. Going back in with Baccara and just blending out any harsh edges from that liner. Okay, that was a little bit of a trust the process, but I do like where we're at right now. I really want to use this gorgeous kind of green shade here called Spring. Just picking up a little bit on my brush and adding that to the brow bone. And fading out. I'm going to add a little bit to the inner corner as well and just sweep that up. For my shimmer, I don't even know if I want to use one. I'm happy with where it is with mattes, but because I'm me, I'm going to use this shade Daffodil, which I think will go with that kind of like greenish chartreuse matte that I put down, and just add a little bit to the inner corner and a little bit to the brow bone. Okay, for my blush, I think I'm going to try to do a little bit of an ombre blush, starting off with Lavender Light. I'm going to pick some up on my brush and just add that to the cheekbone. Now, you know, this is on me light as a blush, but I am going to try to, you know, do a little bit of an ombre, type of thing. Okay. Yeah, here's that lavender light shade, and then I'm going to go in with Cherise Sky and just pick it up on my brush and start to, yeah, fade that out into that shade Lavender Light. Lining my lips with Engrave. Okay, and for my lip shade, I'm going to use this liquid lip in Outback Adventure. No, never mind. The first shade I used was called In Shiraz Sky, and this second shade I'm using is a little bit lighter, and it's called In Crimson Creek. And I'm just going to add a little bit. Added that to my bottom lip, and just pressing my lips together. Not going to go fully opaque. Here is what a light layer of In Crimson Creek looks like. And this is my third completed look. Okay, and some wrap-up thoughts really quick on this palette before I go into using the Nomad palette. I was really inspired by this color story. I honestly don't think I've seen one quite like it. Love the muted tones, as I mentioned. Love that we have a nice range of lighter mattes to deeper mattes. And I don't know, this one doesn't really feel like a seasonal specific palette, but it does feel like it works for summer going into fall. I know I only used one of the shimmers in here, but you know, this is a matte heavy palette and I'm not mad at it at all. The mattes performed really well, and yeah, I'm excited to play around with this one more. I do think that you can get a lot of different looks out of this with the assortment of mattes that you have in here. Fourth palette we're going to dip into is the Nomad palette. This is an 18 pan palette, and I'm not going to get anywhere close to using a bunch of the shades or all of the shades. I'm going to stay mostly on this half of the palette here. Starting off with going in with this shade here as my transition shade. This is called Outback Regulars. I'm just going to place that all over the lid. Now we're just going to take a little bit on a smaller brush and put that on the lower lash line. I'm going to start to build up some depth, going in with the shade Crimson Creek, which is kind of like maroon matte, and just start to build up that outer corner. One thing I've mentioned about the mattes from Nomad before is that this is a very buildable formula. It's another one that I feel like is definitely user-friendly. You're not going to get full pigment right out of the gate. And taking some along the lower lash line. I'm going to further deepen up that outer corner with the shade Cherise Sky, the really rich plum shade. And just, again, connecting that to the outermost portion of the lower lash line. Right in the outermost corner, I'm going to go in with this really deep brown matte here called Plum Horizon. Just use that to gently deepen up that outer corner. And then again, just connecting that down to the lower lash line. Priming the lid with my shimmer primer I think I want to use some of the deeper shimmers in here because I really haven't used deep shimmers for any of the looks that I've done so far. I'm going to go in with this shade here, which is quite a deep, almost like charcoal gray or charcoal plum shimmer. Here's what it looks like swatched on the back of my hand. And I'm just gonna add that to the lid. Deep smoky shimmer. Okay, and for my iridescent, I'm gonna use this shade here, which looks like it has a pretty smooth texture. I'm just gonna pick up a little bit on my fingertip and add that to the inner corner and to the brow bone. Okay, and for my blush, do I want to do another ombre blush? This turned out kind of cool. Yes. I think I'm going to start off with this shade Gone Wandering and just start to put down that shade on my cheekbone. It's kind of like this really pretty burnt orange. And then I'm going to go in with the shade Outback Glow. Just a gorgeous brown toned blush. Ooh, I went very heavy-handed, but I have to say that is blending beautifully. All right, I added some liner and mascara, and here is the fourth completed look. Okay, so some thoughts on this palette. I would describe this as a kind of muted color story, grungy color story for going into fall. I like it. Is it my absolute favorite color story from Nomad? I don't think so. But I really do enjoy the look that I came up with. I think that if I were to maybe change something, I feel like I would have liked to have some pops of bright in here just to contrast with those muted tones. I don't know if that makes sense, but I would have maybe added also a few kind of lighter shades as well. You do have some lighter shades, but maybe some more kind of shades that would just add more contrast to the vibes that are in here. I thought everything, like I said, performed well, and these shimmers I think are the type of formula that will work for a lot of different skin types. They're smooth, they don't really feel like squishy to the touch. So I don't think that people would experience creasing with them. And I like that the vibes of these shimmers are, in general, quite glowy. I love a glowy shimmer. So really complimentary things to say about the shimmers. And in terms of the liquid lips, I've tried on two. I have to play around with these a little bit more. I think that if you're looking for something that's long wearing, these will be really good. It's just that for me, they were a little bit drying, so that was my main kind of critique about these. So if you don't get on well with drier lip products, I do think that is something to keep in mind. My absolute favorite part of the Nomad launch, no notes whatsoever, are these blush palettes. I think that these are incredibly special. I love how inclusive they are. I thought the formula was so fun to use. These actually give me a little bit of the vibes of the blushes that just came out from Violette. That kind of like cream to powder, a little bit putty-like in the pan, but just such a joy to use. So for me, like, if I could have picked up one thing from this launch, it would have been one of these blush palettes. Which of the two, it's very hard to pick between them. I actually liked both of them quite a bit, but I think that if I only could have picked one, it would have been this warmer toned one here. I love a brown blush, and the kind of like sunburnt kind of shades that you get in here I absolutely love. But this one I think is lovely as well. And even that lighter lilac blush I liked using for an ombre blush moment. Whew. Okay, this was definitely a longer video, but I really wanted to give each of these palettes a moment to shine. So I just really hope that you found this video helpful. I would love to hear what you think about these palettes, even if you're not in the market for picking up a palette. I hope that you just enjoyed having the chance to play with makeup, maybe pull out your own palettes from your collection and create some looks together. If you made it to the end of my video, I would so appreciate it if you would leave me a palette emoji or a comment in general, a like. As always, I hope you found this video helpful. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.